shut the Spinster House door after the Earl and Poppy entered, closing out the bright August afternoon and the drone of village life. The birdsong, the buzz of insects, the distant murmur of voices. Suddenly everything was dark and quiet and intimate. It was a little hard to breathe. Ridiculous. Lord Evans hadn't grown, nor the house shrunk. The man wasn't even standing next to her. She should not be feeling crowded and, well, a bit overwhelmed. Or worse, expectant. Still and heavy like a summer day before a storm. She leaned against the reassuringly solid door for a moment to steady herself and glanced at Poppy. The cat looked oddly pleased before blinking and turning her attention to cleaning her paws. Poppy never looks pleased unless I'm obeying her rare demand for petting or offering her some tasty tidbit for my dinner. Truth be told, Poppy made her a little nervous. There was something vaguely supernatural about her, as if she'd once been a witch's familiar or something. Not that Jane believed in witches or any other supernatural foolishness, curses included. Lord Evans had moved farther into the sitting room and was examining a large faded square on the wall. "Didn't care for the picture that hung here, I see." She took a deep breath and shook off her peculiar feelings. "I did not." She started toward him, but stopped a few feet away. She didn't want to get too near. "Oh, for goodness sake, the man isn't going to bite." She forced herself to close the gap between them. "It was hideous. Haven't you seen it?" "No, this is my first time in the Spinster House." He lifted a brow. "What was it of? Some very unspinsterish bacchanal?" He was teasing her again. She'd missed that. No one else, especially no other man, was as much fun to match wits with. "It was a painting of a hunting dog with a dead bird in its mouth. Quite bloodthirsty and ugly. I don't know what Isabel Doring was thinking when she hung it there." He frowned. "Oh, I don't know. I'd say Miss Doring was a bit bloodthirsty herself to have cursed the Duke of Heart's line as she did. She caused centuries of anguish." His frown turned to a scowl. "And is still cutting up the current Duke's peace." "And Cat's peace, too." Cat's baby was due in just over 6 months' time. If it was a boy. No, curses aren't real. They're as make-believe as witches and fairies. She glanced at Poppy, who had moved on to grooming her private parts. And supernatural cats. "The third Duke was a scoundrel to get poor Isabel with child and then marry another woman," she said. She'd always thought that Duke a terrible villain. All the village girls had. But in a fairy tale sort of way. She'd never considered how Isabel's curse would affect a real person until she'd met the current title holder. Lord Evans's scowl deepened. "I'll grant you that wasn't honourable of him, but he didn't force Miss Doring, did he?" "No." Rape had never been part of the story. "And Miss Doring wasn't some naive young miss. The stone in the graveyard says she was 24. Surely you knew how children were created when you were 24. She flushed. Of course. She'd never had a man mention procreation to her. It was freeing. Lord Evans was speaking to her as if she was an intelligent equal, not some fluffy-headed virgin who needed to be shielded from the world. "And if I have the story right, her father was a wealthy merchant who left her this house and his fortune. She chose to invite the third Duke into her bed. I'd say she bears some responsibility for the outcome." "Well, yes, but—" Both brows went up. "What? Is independent Miss Wilkinson going to tell me that poor Isabel was a meek, spineless creature who couldn't make her own decisions?" "No, of course not." To be honest, she'd never understood why Isabel had been so reckless. She'd had her freedom. Why had she squandered it? Perhaps she was overcome by love. Gah! Had she really just said that? But it was true. From her observations, love all too often disabled a woman's good sense. Lord Evans snorted. Or perhaps she was overcome with a desire to be a duchess. That surprised her. The Earl had a sharp wit, but he wasn't normally caustic. "So cynical." "Sadly, Miss Wilkinson, it is not cynicism. I have